Hi, welcome back to Echoes and Edges, the Broken and Beautiful podcast. The Broken and Beautiful is a collective on the hunt for healing, meaning, and transformation. And today we have three of our coaches with the Broken and Beautiful with us and are so fortunate to experience their voice in a way that is meaningful and beautiful and gets their voices out there because they lend so much to people every day in their everyday world and to our collective. And the episode today is called Holding Steady in a Shaking World. And we're doing a holiday roundtable on faith, fear, and family because we have so many opportunities going into the holidays to experience disagreements, or disruptions or dysregulations in our own bodies around family members or even friends sometimes, and certainly in especially politically charged seasons such as we're in, and especially spiritually charged seasons or religiously charged seasons. And there's just a lot of global unrest as well. And so we don't want to just go crashing into the holidays without really taking a breath and talking about some ways to be present to ourselves, to take deep breaths and share just from our own hearts and our own experience some of the ways that we've found to be beneficial in coming back to ourselves over and over again. So I welcome today Daniel Herron, who is a coach with the Remote Collective, the Broken and Beautiful Remote Collective, Carla Rousseau, who is a spiritual director and story coach with the Lincoln Collective, and Shay Eveland, who is a spiritual director and an NFTC certified story coach with the Broken and Beautiful Collective. So welcome all of you. And would you just take a minute to introduce yourselves, one or two sentences or so about who you are and what you'd want the listeners to know?
Yeah, so I'm Daniel, and I'm in Colorado. I live in Colorado. And I am a healing guide and a trauma and transformation coach. And so I've been doing that work for about 7-8 years, as well as running retreats.
Yeah. What does healing guide mean, Daniel?
Yeah, I chose that one actually talking to a client because they were helping me, kind of frame what I do. And the healing guide, I call it that because the journey, the healing journey is what I take people on, or what I walk with people through. And so it's more of being a guide along the journey than, being anything else. So joining somebody as a part of their journey, walking alongside them for a while, as a guide who knows kind of like, if there's a river, how do we cross it? If there's a mountain, how do we get up there? If there's whatever steps in our way, as a person who has some wisdom and knows what to do if we're tackling some hardship or hard places. Yeah.
I love that. I just finished up recording with Ro Elliott on the defenses of the Enneagram types. And she said that her favorite name for type 2, which I don't know if you want to disclose, I'm saying that now, we can edit that out, but for type 2 isn't helper, but guide. I've never heard that before. So, right. Yeah. So I'm just thinking, wow, that feels like a really good description of the type 2, like a balanced type 2 as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I'm fine disclosing that.
Okay, yeah. Great. Thank you. And good to have you here. Thank you for joining. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Carla, how about you? And you'll recognize Carla from just a couple of episodes ago. We did some recording together. Welcome back.
Thanks. Good to be here. I'm Carla. Yep, I'm a spiritual director. That's my my heart. And I do a lot of other things. So I'm still discovering what they all are, but I just enjoy being with people, and I like how you said you're a guide. I am working on my own name for what I do, and the word that keeps coming back to me is illuminate. So it's similar. I like to shine light and share my light until other people discover their own. So that's kind of where I'm landing with that. I'm also a mom. I've raised a lot of kids, 5 of them, and I'm a grandma, and that's my favorite. I love my grandkids. And I was just thinking, I have a new hobby that I'm really enjoying right now. I got a camera. So I love being outside and taking pictures of nature. And I've been spending a lot of time taking pictures of all the fall trees this year. So yeah, looking forward to this.
Thanks so much for being here. And that sounds really delightful. That's really cool. And Shay Eveland, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Shay and I work in the Lincoln office and also online. I do spiritual direction and I do story work, which is trauma informed coaching, narrative focused trauma care, as Patria said. I have been doing that since about 2000. The year 2000 is when I started doing spiritual direction. And a lot of the people who come to me have a lot of questions about their faith and why the things that have happened to them happened. And so I found it beneficial to have a spiritual background when speaking with them, to be able to ask them tough questions, sit with them in tough questions, and just honor that piece of them. They won't always name it trauma. They'll frequently say that they don't know why something is happening the way it is. And we sometimes investigate and find some sources of trauma in their life. It's not always the big T trauma. A lot of it's complex trauma. So thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that explanation too about kind of the connection between stories and spiritual needs. And it makes me just want to say too that as we enter this conversation, to remember that I think right now we're living in collective spiritual trauma. I might say trauma. If that word is too hard to process for some people, I would say at least confusion. We're living in collective spiritual confusion, collective confusion generally, where's up and where's down. And there's just a lot of things that are kind of changing fundamentally. And I don't think that that's all bad. But it's a transition, and transition points are hard and can really shake up our faith. They can shake up our understanding of our own identity and the identity of ourselves in the world. And so let's just kind of hold that, understanding or information as we head into these questions. And we're going to start with a really small question. What does peace even mean right now? And I say that, of course, sarcastically, as a good. Oh, and we should all say our Enneagram types, since I put Daniel on the hot seat there. I'm an Enneagram type 9, so peace is very important to me. And Shay and Carla, would you just say your name and your Enneagram type so that people that are just listening can know who's talking?
Absolutely. I'm Shay and I'm an Enneagram 6. So peace is something I seek a lot of as well.
Right.
I'm Carla and I'm an Enneagram 4.
Yes. Yes. So we have a really good mix here. Enneagram 4s don't always look for peace as much as 9s and 6s. I saw you pause.
Yep.
We'll name the pause in the room.
That?
Right. So I love this mix that we have. I had not even thought about our Enneagram mixes here, but so we've got a 2, and of course I got 2 from the heart center, 1 from the head center, and me from the gut center. So this is going to be a good conversation. So let that inform us, and don't forget to bring your own perspective as it feels right for you. So back to the question, what does peace mean to you? Let's just say that. And then what does peace mean right now? So let's talk through that a little bit before we talk more about faith, fear, and family.
So because I'm thinking about it, because everybody said it was important, it is important to me. Just, I think it comes in a different way. So when I think about what is peace for me, it's like my internal world. Like I need peace internally, and I'm always working that's how I would define how I'm doing inside. Defines to me where peace is, I guess. So that feels a little bit different maybe than people that want it all out here, because sometimes to me, stepping into a conflict brings me peace if I do it well and healthily. So to me, it's not necessarily a lack of conflict, but more of a connection to myself, maybe.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that.
I'm similar because I would relate it to how I feel, being a 2, everything kind of comes through that feeling filter. So I feel peaceful, then that's what peace is for me. And a lot of that has to do with how I'm feeling internally, emotionally, but also I know I'm oriented outwards towards other people. So it has to do with what the people around me are feeling will can impact my peace. Not always, but it can impact my peace. I really love the Passion Translation and how it describes peace. Instead of it be the peace that passes understanding, it says the peace that subdues. And that word subdues, as I was looking it up, it means to overcome, quiet, or bring under control, which is like regulation to me. It says like regulation. And so peace for me also often feels like emotional regulation. When I'm regulated, I feel peaceful.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, I would definitely build on that or agree with that, and just say that this has less to do with my number. I would say my number is the reason for absence of peace. Because being a 6, I'm afraid of a lot of things that come up. And I'm also really in tune with what's going on around me. And so I pick up a lot of signals and may run with them. It might not be as bad as what I'm imagining. And so a lot of mine comes from the internal knowing that I've done my work, and where I can find my peace is internally, and I actually can't count on others to provide it for me. So I would like them to. I mean, that, ideally that would be what I'd love, but that's not what actually happens. So learning to really listen to myself and what I need to have peace right now, which often is a space of quiet and rest. That brings me back to peace.
That's so clear. I just and I'll share from a 9 perspective what I'm experiencing peace to be too. But I just want to say that all of your descriptions of peace are different, right? There's something unique about each one, and they're also expressions of a lot of balance. Like, I hear and feel the balance in your life, it doesn't come naturally. Like, you have to work for that balance, right? We all have to work for wholeheartedness. Some people think of it as health, or just alignment. I like to think of it as just being in alignment with myself, where I feel like I'm trusting myself, and believing that I can handle hard things or something like that. And so peace is, for me, I'm learning that real peace for me is not the absence of conflict, but I don't mind conflict. I've never really I tend to go toward conflict, not because I like it, but because I feel a desire to impact conflict for the good. And that's historical since I was a little girl. But the fear of disconnection is what keeps me kind of becoming the peacemaker. Like, I become like a grounding rod emotionally. And so I'm learning that real peace for me means, I am a peacemaker. I am a mediator, but I don't have to be one. And that chaos can happen, and it's not all mine to handle. And so that's what peace, I would say, is for me right now. It's evolving as I grow too. So just building on that, thinking then about these holidays coming up and all the things that come with holidays. It's not just dinner around a table. Some people don't even have dinner around the table. It's lots of things that come with the holidays. It's pressure to be joyful. It's pressure to have a big meal. Not everybody has that luxury. It's pressure to have lots of gifts or give gifts or know what gifts are. It's also can be so full of joy and so full of traditions and, sparkly lights and fun things like hot chocolate and cold, walks through the zoo or something like that at night with Christmas lights and things like that. So there are these both and at Christmas time as we kind of come in and we want to hold space for sadness and for joy at the same time. So just thinking about the different perspectives, and all of these valences, all of these energies happening at the same time. How have you learned, or what are you learning about staying connected even in sharp disagreements or different seasons or different places in life? What have you learned about that?
There's been a lot of strife in the holidays for me, starting from a young age, of a lot of expectation and then a lot of not being allowed to feel disappointed and all those kinds of things. We were a poor missionary family, and so there wasn't a lot that came at the holidays, and then we weren't allowed to be disappointed, and we weren't allowed to ask for things either. So the holidays has traditionally been a pretty tough place for me. I feel all of that, the pressure that you're talking about with gifts and the pressure to, it amplifies all of the triggers for the young parts of me as I come into the holidays. But over the last 5 years, being a part of my wife's family is a really redemptive process for me. Because they are the greatest celebrators. They are so over the top in everything. And for a while, that was also really hard because it's like, well, you're not supposed to have that. You're not supposed to get all that and blah, blah. So what I have had to do for myself, or what I've learned to do for myself, is to start with acknowledgement. Starting with acknowledging that it's hard for me and that I will feel things. Because I used to just try and dismiss those pieces, push them away, say, okay, I'm supposed to be happy. This is supposed to be fun, all of that. And that would just leave me in an internal place of strife, no peace internally, but I can show it and project it to the world outside. So for me, it's a little bit backwards from what I was told, is that turning towards the places that are hard inside of myself, like turning towards the anger or the sadness or the anxiety or the fear, turning towards that has actually brought me to a more peaceful presence in that. Like as soon as I turn my attention towards it, it's like that's what the little parts of me wanted. They just wanted the attention to say, hey, this is hard. Yeah, this is hard. And it's okay. We'll be okay when it's hard.
It sounds so simple when you say it that way, but it is not, is it?
No.
No, because there's that war
years.
set in place.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like I shouldn't and I ought not. And you said I couldn't complain. I wasn't even allowed to complain. So that's kind of an agreement that we come into, in this case, right? Thank you. Mm-hmm. Shay and Carla, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking about my own process there, as I've walked through a space of rediscovering who I am and having my own autonomy and my own agency, and how hard that's been for me, especially in the realm of my family, because I'm closest to them, and to change that dynamic there has been difficult for me. And so, for a period of time, I dread the thought of having to step in, because I'm learning about myself, and maybe that self is different than what everybody's been accustomed to in me. And that just wanting to have the strength to step in as me and not always being able to follow through with that in that environment. So It's just been the last couple years, and things have changed a lot for me. So, like my own children, like I created things and holiday experiences that I wanted for them, and now they've all grown. A lot of them are married. They do their own thing. So every year it's a little bit different for me now. So it was a couple years ago. It's like, oh, what do I want? Like how am I going to do this? So it's always seems to be moving. So I'm still adjusting to all the movement every year, but like I'm not experiencing anxiety as I feel like I've grown up a little in self, and I feel safer within me, that peace that, we were talking about. When I have that, I can step into a lot of environments and take that with me, I guess. Maybe that's how I want to say it. I take it with me there so I don't have to panic the way I used to. So
I even really appreciate you kind of bringing up that you can't always follow through perfectly with the new thoughts, or especially when it's constantly changing like that, but also because transitions are like it's a growth process. It's not a target that we're trying to hit, right? It's an unfolding. And Ro just said those words, and I just thought those were so beautiful in our last recording, that it's unfolding. And that's what I feel like you're describing there, is it's something happening over time, and we can't just make a decision to be a better person, whatever that might be. It isn't about that. It's about learning and adapting and growing.
It was interesting listening to you, Carla, kind of touching on all the stages that we go through with our families, because I too have grown children now. And so some of what I'm referencing is not necessarily the way it is so much anymore, just simply because they've grown. But I still wanted to mention it in case some of our viewers are younger, or our listeners are younger, because I think it's really important to acknowledge that when you're younger, a lot of family members put expectations on you. For example, to visit with the young children, to go visit all the different family members, things like that. And that was so stressful for me. The expectations were hard. And so as much as I wanted to stay connected to family, what I finally learned was I had to connect with myself first. I had to actually know what I needed before I could decide what I could say yes to. And so I'm definitely an introvert and need my space and my quiet. And so lots of big holiday gatherings are hard on me. So one thing I've done with my family to help them understand where I'm coming from is to name that with them, to just say, I know we're different. That's not as enjoyable for me. I still go, but I may not spend as much time as everybody else. I may do some different things and leave a little earlier, or maybe hold the little ones in the family, hold the babies while other people are playing games, But yeah, I do think connection's important, but I almost had to go full circle and come back to that and learn a little more about what I needed first to be able to show up well for others.
Yeah, that's so true. And I hear us all kind of, to some degree, kind of addressing just the necessary changes of life and growth. That growth brings change, and growth brings needs, and we have to either adapt or go back, right? And oftentimes we can't go back. I mean, when something has truly transformed in me anyway, it's almost like the way behind closes. I don't necessarily know the way forward, but I can't really go back. And so, just holding all of that kind of in mind, let's talk to the listeners and let's talk together about, where have you chosen, or I chosen, silence over truth telling? Because sometimes there can be this sort of like pressure to be an evangelist for the truth, and the truth can, I hate to say it, but it's variable, right? There is not a static not in our life experience. I'm not saying that there's not a God's truth or that, that there's not absolute truth out there, but in our own experiences, we all come from different ways of thinking, and we're at different points in our life where we're evolving and unfolding. And so it's really hard sometimes to discern when to speak, when to be quiet. And to some degree, you all talked about staying and learning to come back to yourself and staying with yourself, kind of maybe putting on your own oxygen mask. And me too, I can identify with that. So let's talk about that. Like, do you have thoughts about silence versus speaking up? And they don't have to be a direct answer to that, but just even thoughts about that.
For years, I was silent because of fear of conflict. And I think I do still show up in silence a lot now, but now it's because of an understanding of who I'm visiting with, who I'm hanging out with that day. If I know what their thoughts on something are, I'm pretty aware that I'm not going to change them. These are people I've loved and known for many years. And so it doesn't seem kind to them or to me to try to change something in them.
Well, if I may reflect that feels both brave and wise, because,
Exactly.
we're all nodding, because you introed, and you're talking about how hard it is to come back to your own authority. And that is brave, and to not be silent, but to be aware and to give yourself pause and a break. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
I've had to spend a lot of time there because I naturally too am silent a lot. And a lot of that is because I feel more than I think. So I do a lot of intuiting, I guess. And so I've often felt like I can't prove or convince somebody with facts about what I've concluded about a subject. So I've just, to be kind to me anymore, I will not participate in conversations that I feel like I have to do that. Like if somebody wants to hold my thoughts and be with me in them and allow me to express and talk through them, then I'm willing to have conversations with just about anybody, whether they think like me or not. I like having diversity around me. I actually enjoy that. It helps me a lot figure out what I'm thinking with my thoughts. So I'll do that. And I have also come to a place where I do speak up if I feel like what somebody is saying or doing is harming another person. That's like one of my own guidelines there is like, if you're speaking in a way, even if somebody's not present, but I feel like it's bringing harm, then I speak there.
I love that. I can see you doing that, Carla.
Yeah, it's a value. You're talking about a known value and being willing to step in, hopefully on behalf of yourself too, but that's a little harder. I think it's a little easier to step in these kinds of circumstances on behalf of another, because especially in families, there's oftentimes a loyalty aspect where everybody will sort of have to agree in a sense, if there's obvious harm going, like if that makes sense, it's not necessarily outwardly said, but there can be an importance, but it can be harder to step up for ourselves too. And that might be a place where we choose to not step up to the plate there in those moments.
Learning the line of when to be silent and when to speak up, as I kind of come from the other direction of you two ladies. I started out very abrasive, and if there's a line, then you can probably see me on the other side of it. I don't like to stay in the line. In fact, if it's there, I'm probably going to cross it just to see what's on the other side. Which, as a child, for me, that was labeled as wild and out of control and rebellious. Yeah, it's bad.
Defiant, probably.
Yep, all of that stuff. And I've come to see it now as, okay, this is one of my great strengths. this wildness of me, which is, why I've kind of reclaimed the word wild for myself. But to come at it, instead of coming at it from this really abrasive place, which is the way I would do it as a 2, I would be stressed out. And so you come from an 8 perspective, like just really direct and really hammering people with truth, or with at least something that would just be like counter to what's being said. So I had to learn to be silent, swing the pendulum the other way, so that I'm not coming in abrasive, so that I can learn to use my voice in a better, more powerful way. Like I think one of those things was, I don't need to be right anymore, which is something that I grew up with, is that I need to be right, and I need to have my thoughts, layered out, and they need to be rational and all that stuff, which is nowhere near who I am as a 2. I'm very felt. I'm very felt experience. So as I've settled more into the intuitive place of who I am, it's just allowed me to relax in my voice, and come at it from a different place. So these days, it is very much about kind of having some boundaries within myself of, all right, I'm not going to talk about these certain subjects. I'm not going to talk about politics. I'm not going to talk about people who aren't there. I'm not going to talk bad about people in these circumstances, because that's not what we're here for. We're here to enjoy each other and get together and, kind of catch up on life if I haven't seen people for a while. But I really resonate with protecting myself. And the protection for me comes from another source. It's actually, to be silent is to protect myself, because kind of what I was taught was that we're supposed to be vulnerable in all situations. And what I learned is that was more about exposure. And so instead of being vulnerable, it's just exposing everything that's on the inside to the outside. And we can't live exposed all the time. I think of like the mountaintop, right? The mountaintop is exposed. Nothing lives there. Nothing can live there. Right. And so if I live that way, then that's just death to my soul, to my heart, to all of me. So that protective place of stepping back into I don't have to share what's there. I don't have to let you know what I'm feeling. I don't have to that's a very protective place that's really helped my internal world be like, okay, we're okay here.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah. So well said. I really appreciate that imagery of the top of the mountain where nothing can grow there. And I was thinking the word exploitation, where sometimes exposure can be kind of almost groomed in. And if we think about grooming in terms of a soul wound, where then you're taught to overexpose, and that's called honesty or integrity or something like that. And
or vulnerability.
And so just vulnerability and that authenticity. I really resonate with that as a 9. 9s and 2s have a lot of I could probably almost word for word agree with what you said. And I want to talk about intuition, because Shay, you didn't mention intuition, but I want to talk about intuition and discernment before we move on, because a lot of what we're discussing is discernment, right? It's discerning. It's threading needles. It's discerning this and that. It's staying present, staying awake, not being pressured to do this or do that necessarily, but discerning what's good and true for the moment. And intuition is kind of like a different sense, at least the way that I understand it. It's not like seeing or hearing or smelling. It's a little bit different than that. It's more of a soul situation, or, I'm not going to try to define intuition, but I will say, I was going to say, well, I'm just going to leave that one alone. But I will say that for each of us, I think we're trying to separate out something from intuition. So for me, I'm trying to separate out merging and intuition, because I'm very intuitive as well. I pick up on a lot of unspoken things, but I don't easily know the difference between merging and intuition. And so that's kind of my work. And for Shay, for type 6s, I would say intuition and projection feel like the same thing, where that inside stuff gets projected out and then it feels like intuition. And so that's why the response or the reactivity to so much outside of yourself. And for 4s, intuition and feelings, and 2, for both of you in the heart triad, I think intuition and feelings feel like the same thing. Would you edit that at all? Yeah. Does that feel right? So it feels like I just want to put that on the table, and each type has a type of intuition, but I would say our types are very intuitive types. And that's really interesting, again, in our little matchup here. I didn't think about that, but all of our types are very naturally intuitive types. So it is an extra step to discern what's happening for us and then to discern what to do with what's happening for us. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the unspoken things that is happening here is we're talking about fear, right? There's fear of something. There's fear of loss. There's fear of rejection. There's fear of disconnection. I'm sure you can think of other fears, but I want to put those on the table clearly so that we can talk about how we metabolize. How do we metabolize fear? What does that mean to you, instead of like spreading it or, outsourcing, putting it on somebody else, like a hot potato? How do we metabolize it?
Well, specifically during the holidays, I would say I've learned to take space for myself, which is something that I never felt like I was allowed to do. I never gave myself permission for, because I'm seeing people that I haven't seen in a really long time. And so I'm supposed to be present the whole time. Like you can't take any space for yourself. And especially as a 2, we have to be engaged and all that. So I think there's partially a fear of missing out, but there's a bigger fear in there too, of like missing connection or being thought of poorly because I'm not present. But that's a big thing for me, not just fear, but metabolizing everything I feel I need space for. And so again, it comes back to that first step for me, which is acknowledgement. To acknowledge something is going on, which has been the hardest step a lot of times, but now it's not so hard. So acknowledging that something's going on and then being curious with myself of like, okay, wait, what's happening? And then a lot of times I need space. And so that might mean stepping away to a quiet room. I always bring my headphones with me now to holidays so that I can go to a space where I can create space for myself to metabolize, whether that's just going and sitting outside by myself and listening to music. Amanda Cook's Evergreen album is like the best metabolizing album for me. And so that's what I'll do. I will take the space that I need if it's in the middle of the day. And usually for me, I need if there's some sort of emotion going on, fear, anger, sadness, whatever, it metabolized through tears as a 2 for me. And so I just need some space for that. And then the music helps whatever that is to come.
That's really a good description of metabolizing, which is like, so just, I should have said this at the outset, but metabolizing is digesting, mm-hmm. right? It's what is coming in is being now used for energy and good things and actually used as a good experience or good for ourselves. Yeah. Like metabolizing a banana. I don't know why that's the, I don't know why that's the example I thought of, but I'm a nurse first. So
there you go.
I'm not sure if it's exactly related to my story or my number, but I can get easily thrown off still and feel like I'm overwhelmed. I would say in danger, but that's what I mean by danger. I don't necessarily mean that I'm physically in danger, but just that it's too much, that I don't know how to respond to certain things, certain behaviors of other people. And I start to feel very uncomfortable and like I need to leave. So first of all, I give myself a lot of built-in breaks. And that's one thing that helps me. And I usually prepare before I go do something for the holidays. I'll talk to somebody, a friend or a counselor about it ahead of time and kind of come up with what my plan is. And then I definitely, in terms of metabolizing it afterwards, I have to process it with somebody because things are said that I would frequently, in the past, I would take them in as facts, as truths about myself or other people, things that are said in the family. And now I'm able to process them and kind of realize that not only is it not necessarily true, but, I get to define who I am and those other people get to define themselves. So I definitely now see it as space to grow and it challenges me. Whereas before it felt like torture. When I was younger, it was like, I can't do this again, 2 holidays back to back. But now it's just a completely different experience now. So with a lot of support, it's much better.
With a lot of support, it's much better. I feel like amen, amen,
Right.
amen. That feels really important. Yeah.
I think even setting myself up well for that, because it's going to come for me there. So knowing that I'm choosing to be here, like that's my choice, and I can choose to leave. Like I have to actually tell myself that, like I can choose to leave if if I need that space, and even if it's just for a few minutes, if I'm going to take a 10-minute walk, like I too have to have a plan when I'm setting off to do these things. And so I do spend time. How will I get my little breaks? You bring your earbuds. That's a great idea. I might try that this year. But that, and then I too, it's really, really important that I process because I get confused about my own truth. And when I'm in that environment and there's that type of fear, or that's how it goes into me, like I easily forget what I know. And so I have people, like I might even text them right in that situation and say, help me, like remind me of what I told you a long time ago about this, or, I need to be reminded a lot.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good point, losing ourselves. I think that's why the question, or let me restate that. That is why the question, because fear induces a reaction within us, whatever that reaction is. And it dysregulates, right? Or it either takes us too full on, like Daniel, you said you had to come back from the line, or withdraw, which I can identify with withdrawal. But to allow it to metabolize is a different thing. It's very much like presence. And just as the only body type here today, I'll talk about movement being so important for metabolization. That literal just moving my body gets a lot of like true peace, like grounding back into myself, remembering who I am, connecting with God, connecting with myself, and getting clarity. And clarity is always what has eluded me. And it's really the movement of my body that helps me find that thing that's elusive. Just to keep the conversation moving, I would love to sit here and talk longer, but just for the sake of all of our time and the listeners' time, let's move from fear to hope. We're talking about faith, fear, faith, and family. And fear and hope are, kind of sometimes thought of as opposites of each other. How do you see fear and hope connected? Or another way to say that is, have you found hope and fear to be disconnected? Or do you feel like hope is naive? Might be another way to say that.
I don't quite know exactly how to answer that as the opposite effect. I just know, like, I am wired for hope, which is frustrating to me sometimes. So, like, I'm always seeing things through that in the end. I go through a process, but like, I have resilient hope.
Yeah. Resilience. Yeah.
Yes. It's just, that's what it is. So I'm struggling right here. I'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts, like to separate those two because of that. Like, I think if I'm hearing right, like I enter that space where the fear has taken over, and I'm questioning and feeling chaotic and wondering what's up and what's down. And then when I reconnect to myself in the ways that I've learned to do that, which I still have a lot of learning to do there, but the ways I have learned to do that, when I get there, like that is where I end almost. And I don't quite know how that happens exactly.
Carla, you've described it to me as like this is part of seeing. Like you're seeing is that you see the best in people, no matter how they're showing up. Like you can see the image of what they could be in the best. And that has been confusing to you in the past because you're seeing that, but the reality of what's happening isn't that right now.
Yeah.
Wonder how that plays into it. Like you need being able to differentiate what's happening and what you see.
Yeah, that discernment piece, maybe that's where it fits in for me, what we were just talking about, like that discernment and understanding, like where the truth maybe. And
Well, and maybe it's the tension of the both and. Yeah, the narrative Enneagram calls this radical imagination, and that I think of you there.
Absolutely.
Like that's radical imagination.
Yeah.
And that feels so related to how you metabolize fear.
I can suffer just a real disconnect and disappointment there, but I think because I have vision for that, what did you call it?
Radical imagination.
Yeah, love that.
Because I could see that is where that hope is, right?
Right.
And what could be.
I was thinking as a Enneagram 6, I, as recently as last week, said that hope is kind of pointless and also that I'm afraid of having hope. But on the other hand, to know myself and to know what I bring has helped overcome a lot of those fears.
Yeah.
Because the fear is related to this sense that I need everyone else to provide safety for me. And so as long as I'm dependent on other people to provide it, I'm going to be let down. So I think hope is in the being able to name that, the knowing what is. And family members are not going to provide me with complete safety. And I guess we would all love for that to happen, but I know we're not alone. I'm sure people listening to us can relate that at least they know somebody who they don't feel safe around. The amazing thing is understanding that I have the power in me to create safety, and that whether that's leaving, whether that's doing something I need to do in the moment, or even if I suffered through something, knowing that I know how to get out of it later and get my own needs met. I think that's where the hope lies for me, is just knowing that the answers are actually here and not out there in other people. So that's been a huge growth area for me.
I really appreciate the way that you stated that and the coming and saying it. Like Dr. Dan Siegel says, name it to tame it, which feels so important here. Like the naming it really does work to metabolize fear. Just like you mentioned that, Daniel, too, in terms of saying what's true, acknowledgement, like this is true.
Yeah.
And then all of our parts, little parts, or just the reasonable fear in response to people who maybe are not, so involved in growth processes, can calm because we're not living outside of reality in those moments. We're actually naming what's true. And that can really help to metabolize fear. So I really appreciate that.
I find myself wondering here as we talk about fear and hope together, If they're kind of like some of the other things I've run into, like desire and disappointment. I feel like they live in the same place, and so we can't have desire without having disappointment, or grief and gratitude. They kind of live in the same places. So I find myself wondering, is fear and hope kind of the same thing? We can't have hope without fear, and we can't have fear without hope. I don't know. Anyway, I think it's fascinating. But what I would say is that part of what gives me hope now in the process of life, and especially in this time that has been so, what's the word? Divisive, and like where topics are much harder than they used to be, like things that we could talk about before, like politics or things like that. We just can't even do it right now because they're so divisive. If there's that kind of separation, we have to be really careful there. And it reminds me of Valerie Kaur, who has written some beautiful books, but she talks about life as a birthing process. And so the closer we get to the birth of something new, the greater the pain of the contraction. And that gives me a lot of hope, because it's like things are getting harder, and they're getting harder. And that's going to birth something. That's going to burst something. And so we're just now in the pain of the contraction. And so what does it look like for us to embrace the pain of the contraction with a loving knowing that this is going to birth something new? And so that's kind of how I've been approaching life in this year, is like, okay, that gives me a lot of hope. So there's a paradox there. As the worse things get, that we're getting closer to something better.
Yay.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I was thinking it probably would have been helpful to define hope a little bit, but I think we are defining it here. And I would just add my 2 cents worth on it. Is I often think of hope as like earthy belief in something, that it doesn't mean there's necessarily any outcome to it, but it's an earthy belief that something could be good here. That's what hope feels like to me. And faith feels like courage to me. It feels more akin to courage. And I don't hear it really talked about that way, but that's kind of how I think of faith, as I'm courageously stepping into something that I can't see. That's what faith feels like to me. Any thoughts about that before we move on? Yeah.
I would just say that the other thing that has been crossing my mind as I've thought about these topics is that there's a paradox in the backwards way of healing, and I think Jesus's story showed us this paradox and backwardsness all the time. But that our design is for love, and so even things like oppression, even things like abuse, like there's that phrase that necessity is the mother of invention. And so like those places put us into a place of necessity. My childhood and the way that I wasn't seen and I was missed and I wasn't heard, it put me in this necessity for survival. And so I created these mechanisms to cope and get me through. But that was all about the design of healing and the design of love. And so now I'm back into the place of, all right, I created this necessity in me, and that created this invention of how do I get to love? How do I get to? And so it always feels paradoxical in like these movements that could be viewed as bad are not bad. They are just there in their life, and they're part of being human. That gives me a lot of hope too.
I really appreciate that, and that it neutralizes the threat, right? It's not good or bad. It's a thing. And so what does love ask of us then, in this season, as we're coming up to this with opportunities abounding, whether it's family, friends, strangers at the mall, whatever that the case may be, for you. And don't feel like there's a right answer here. Let's just kind of talk out loud about what does love ask of us this season in the way that we understand love?
So I think there's a lot of ways we interpret what it means to love ourselves, but in the sense of taking care of myself and returning to myself and being healthy within myself, I'd say that's a starting point for me. So if I love myself that way, then I'm able to make space and hold space for other people, because that's really what I long to do. I want to be curious about why people think the way they think. I'm curious about their stories. I'm curious about their experiences that bring them to the place that they are. And I want to do that without judgment. I want to do that with like abundant love, so that we can all maybe see and hear one another, even when things are so different.
I love what you said, Carla. I would just add to that. When we talk about our inner self or our inner child, I think sometimes that language throws people off. And so I just simply say, who do you know? Like, do you have grandchildren or children or young neighbors? You know, who can you place in that role?
Yeah.
And what would you offer to them for that event, for that day, for that moment that you're struggling? And so when I offer it to myself in that moment, when I treat myself at Thanksgiving or Christmas, if I treat myself like I might treat my young granddaughters and be curious with myself about why I'm reacting to something, or love myself well, I'm actually so much more inclined to offer that to others, because now I have capacity to. If I don't take a moment to stop and take care of myself, then I'm just flustered and I have nothing to offer anyone. So when we talk about loving ourselves, we're not trying to take away from other people to give to us. We're actually just aware that it's the only way we have anything to offer.
Yeah. One of my clients gave me a gift a couple of years ago, and she said to me that there's a difference between love, like, and respect. I can love you and not like you and not respect your thoughts or what you're saying, or vice versa. And boy, has that impacted the way I look at relationships, because I used to think if I love somebody, it had to be all three things.
Sure.
So I had to like you and I had to respect what you were saying. And so to me, love asks us for kindness and compassion and empathy and those kinds of things. And I can do all of that separate from whether I like you and what you're saying, or whether I respect you and your thoughts and beliefs and opinions. I can offer you kindness. I can offer you compassion. I can offer you empathy. And so that's kind of my move into engagement with people that, boy, if I have a differing opinion and I know it, and I know it's going to be hard, it's like, I don't have to respect what they say, but I still love this person. So I want to offer them kindness. I want to offer them my smile. I want to offer them my fun spirit. I want to offer them, the engagement and depth and the things that I know are gifts that I can give to people, which is my unique way of loving that God has given me. So yeah, that's what I would say love is asking of me, at least.
I really appreciate that you talked about the differences between love and like and respect. There, you said a client gave you that gift. That isn't that true? We all have these nuggets that we take from clients. I always feel like it's such a two-way street there, and they bring so much. Clients bring so much to us. People bring so much to us,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
And clients are people, and that's true. And I would say that this is a beautiful place to wrap up this conversation, that I would just invite our listeners to be, discerning your own voice, listen to your own voice, because you can hear from us how different really the answer. It's the same answer in one sense, but it's a different answer in the output of it. Like, we're going to bring that to our own families, our own selves differently. But if you haven't heard anything at all this whole time and you're still here, well, bless you. But I hope you've heard a lot more. But if you haven't heard anything else, the idea is you have to have oxygen before you can help anybody else. This is math. It's emotional math. And that's often how I think about love is, loving ourselves is often so misrepresented as selfish or wrong. And it really is just emotional math. It's emotional oxygen where I have to live with myself all the time for my whole life. And I'm the only one that that's true of.
Yes.
So I have to have a value system. I have to live, I literally have to live with what choices I make and what I say and don't say. And that's to me what love is like loving that I can't be in love is that I can't be in relationship with you if I am not me first. Like there is no relationship if I'm not me. And so that's kind of my way of thinking about it. And just to all of our listeners, thank you so much for being here and listening to these thoughts that we have. And Shay and Carla and Daniel, I could talk all night with you guys. This is really, really beautiful and exciting. It's exciting. I know that it's not like a celebratory party, but it's so good and it's so important. And I just so appreciate your input and all the work that you have done respectively and that I have done to get here to a place where we can have grounded presence and talk about this. And I also want to reiterate the community support, that we really need each other, to get through these hard times and to not try to do it alone. And if you are alone, please reach out to our collective. We are here, and you can reach Daniel through our collective on the website at thebrokenandbeautiful.com. Daniel, is there any other way that you would want to direct people to reach out to you as well?
Yeah, that is the best way. mooseofthewild.com, which you can see my tagline down there with my name, but yeah, you can reach out to me.
Why don't you
there.
spell that, since it might just be listening people?
Yeah. Musa is M-U-S-A. It's Moses in Swahili, and I was born in East Africa. So Musa is my middle name. Oh. So it's me reclaiming my own self, mooseofthewild.com.
.com. Yeah. So thebrokenandbeautiful.com and mooseofthewild.com for Daniel. And Carla is on the website at Carla at thebrokenandbeautiful.com. Any other way, Carla, that you would want people to reach out to you?
That's a good way to find me.
Okay. And same for Shay at thebrokenandbeautiful.com. And that's the way to reach out. Also, if you go to thebrokenandbeautiful.com, you can see that we have like 21 coaches or counselors among us, and any one of us would be happy to serve you and help you find community if that would be helpful for you. So again, thank you to the three of you. I hope we get to do this again. And if you say yes, we will. So you don't have to say yes right now, like no pressure. Yes. But if you say yes, we will.
Yes.
Yay. All right. Good. All right. Yeah. To our listeners, thank you for being here. If this has been helpful to you, please like, subscribe, and follow, and share with a friend that might also be in need of support or just an uplifting experience. And follow us at The Broken and Beautiful Stories on Instagram and The Broken and Beautiful LLC on Facebook. See you later.